6:30, we'll be calling the Public Works and Economics Committee to be ordered. Members are Mrs. Ramos, Mr. Rippeth, myself, and the alternate is Kelly Wrigley. We have 4 assignments, and pretty much all 4 of these assignments are house cleaning, basically housekeeping. Pretty no-brainer, pretty much just let them spend money on us kind of stuff. So the first one is proposed resolution 14/2023. This is in regards to Glen Drive Phase 2, and I'm going to turn this over to the service director to speak on.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I'll report later tonight in my service director's report that Glen Drive Phase 1 is done. This will just be put in, and we was fortunate enough to get an OPWC grant for Phase 1. So again, we'll be going for a $299,000 grant to continue up the hill. Originally it was, if we remember, it was going to be a 2-phase, but with we all know we had to bid that out 3 different times to get the pricing. There was no one to bid on it the first couple times, and pricing was over that 10% threshold. So it's going to be a 3-phase, but this will do approximately 550 more feet. Again, we'll be going for that in November, so if we get that passed tonight, that'd be great. The rest of the funds on the shortfall would be, there's a little bit of water line improvement through there, but the bulk of it will be stormwater improvements to tie into the new storm lines that we have going in there now. So that would be the, I don't know if there'd be any capital improvement money out of the general fund or anything like that. It'd be through the stormwater.
Okay. And as the service director mentioned, that he'd like to have this, if we do decide to do action on, have it passed on the first reading tonight, so we can get that application in for that grant.
If I may add, Mr. Chairman, and if we don't get it, we'll just, we're gonna move forward because we gotta have some funding. So if we do not get this grant, I'm sure we won't move forward with it. So it's just to get out there and get that grant, try to get that started.
Yep. Any questions from committee? Mrs. Ramos? No? Mr. Ribbon? No? Any action to be taken on proposed resolution 14?
I would move that we put resolution 14, 2023 on the agenda tonight and ask for the rules to be suspended so that we can pass it as an emergency this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rippeth. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Ramos? And we'll take a vote. Mr. Rippeth?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos?
Yes.
And I vote yes also. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is proposed resolution 17. Which involves the county auditor, so I'm going to let Beth talk about this briefly if she can.
It's something we need to do every year for the Budget Commission, telling them that we are aware of the ongoing levies and we approve that they keep those levies active and open.
Funds. And you're at,
And they set forth the projected amounts that we might get from those levies.
okay. And the letter I read from the county auditor is asking us to have this passed by the 30th, so that way
Yeah.
they can get their ducks aligned with everybody
Correct.
else. Okay. Any questions from the committee? No? And any action on proposed resolution 17?
I would also move that we place that on tonight's agenda and ask for passage, suspension of the rules and passage tonight so that we can get that taken care of.
All right, and a second?
She's coming.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Ramos. We'll take a vote. Mr. Ribbon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. Okay, the next one we have tonight is proposed resolution 18, and this is a ODNR grant application for the South Side Park, and I'll let Service Director speak on this one also.
Thank you, Mr. President. In Phase 1, we was fortunate enough to receive an ODNR grant, and typically it's restrooms and/or pavilions. Again, this will be Phase 2, where we're trying to go out and receive one for a restroom. If you know, out down there now, we have the 2. This will be a a larger restroom that'll be, combination restroom and, I wanna say a concession stand combined. It's for $45,000. This does not have to be passed tonight. As a matter of fact, Aaron Wright from, Omega would like to come in and show us some other grant opportunities we may have for that, because, it's gonna take a lot more than the $45,000. But as you know, we was fortunate enough to get it on phase one, and for that whole project, we was fortunate enough to get almost $2.3 million for phase one. We'd love to get that again for phase two. This is just the first start of, trying to, get those grants.
Thank you. And he mentioned on this one is not an emergency that we're gonna have the engineers come in and speak on it at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, either the next meeting or the following meeting. If you look at my mayor's report,
Okay.
I talk about this
Okay,
and how Aaron would like letters of support from the public
yeah, I did see that,
as
yes.
part of the grant application.
So maybe we should hold on to this until after we've met with her? Or should we go ahead and put it on for a first reading?
Well, go ahead, Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the deadline is in November, so,
So I mean, in 3 readings, we'll
Yeah.
have plenty of time for her to come and speak
Yeah.
on it.
and you can always hold it for.
Fourth
you know,
reading.
fourth
The
reading.
fourth reading, and
Yeah.
get that in. Okay.
Yeah.
That
Just
gives
trying
us
to
more
time
time to
things
get
out.
more letters.
Yep.
and
Sure.
whatnot. Any action to be taken on proposed, oh, I'm sorry, is there any questions on proposed resolution?
No.
Anybody in council? No. Any action to be taken on proposed resolution 18?
I would move that we put this on tonight's agenda for first reading and move forward from there.
Okay. And we'll take a vote. Mr. Ribbeth?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't take a second, I'm sorry. My bad.
Oh,
Second,
second.
second, Mrs. Ramos. Okay, we'll take a vote now. Mr. Ribbeth?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. All right, the last thing we were gonna talk about tonight is proposed ordinance 2023, and this is involved to the, surface replacement for the bridge over Tuscarawas River, State Route 259. And again, I can keep picking on the service director here, but
Not picking on me at all.
I'll turn it over to him to speak on this.
Not picking on me at all, Dan. Thank you, Mr. So anyways, this here, if anybody knows where 259 is, what that is right there at 416 between Reeser Avenue, that bridge will be getting resurfaced. And I agree with you on this one, that this is a true housekeeping one, because if you read on further there, the entire cost is bared by ODOT District 11. So it's just the preliminary legislation, anything they do, they have legislation that accompanies it. I don't have to have it till December, but again, if it's whatever your will is fine with me.
You'd like to get it passed.
Yeah, whatever your will is fine with me. When I talked with David Hoffman, you know, he's, just get your ducks in a row, and whenever you get it, that's fine. But again, if you look at it, there's no cost to local here, it's all bared by ODOT District 11.
And that particular area is, it's like a couple different, you know, some of it's state, some of
Right.
it's county, some of it's cities.
Yes, some
A
township,
little bit of everything.
yes, and they'll be doing new railing on it and the new surface.
Okay. Any questions for proposed ordinance 20? Council, anybody? No, not seeing none. Do we have any action to be taken on proposed ordinance 20, 22, 23?
Well, I was gonna give Cheryl the opportunity, but I would move that we put it on the agenda for tonight for a first reading.
And, did you want, I'm sorry.
Do we need it as an
It
emergency?
does not.
Does not, okay.
Councilmember,
Okay.
Councilmember,
We'll just,
sorry.
well,
Yes,
yeah.
I did, I kind of surmised that from what you were saying.
Yeah.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Ramos? All right, and we'll take a vote. Mr. Ribbeth?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. All right, anything else to come before committee? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn
So moved.
at 6:39?
You did all right for having that much stuff. That's
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin tonight's Salary Committee meeting. Members of the committee are myself, Mr. Holland, Mr. Ricklick, and alternate Mr. Rippeth. So we met 2 weeks ago to discuss proposed pay increases for non-bargaining personnel, and we're here again tonight to continue those discussions. I'm gonna start with my comments and then open the floor to committee members, administrators, council members, and then guests. So, I have a couple of things to say. They're in random order, but things that I feel like should be said. So, we received a request to do an additional extensive research on this matter. I don't have a staff, and it would take many months to compile the requested information, but I feel very strongly that it's not needed, that we've done the research, and we have the numbers, and we know the information. The research has been done, and it clearly shows that we're behind, and we will continue to be behind. If we don't recognize that we need to be competitive and compensate appropriately, we have the potential to go backwards. And I don't really think this is just about us and the next 3 years. This is about the future. When I was growing up, people wanted to work for the city because they provided acceptable wages and benefits. It was quite an accomplishment at that time to have a job in the city. You were looked upon like, wow, you have a job in the city, that's awesome. I don't think that view is the same today. People may disagree, but I don't think that's the same view today. None of us here would even take a job at the city or anywhere else for that matter if it wasn't competitive in wages and benefits. None of us here would stay at a job if it wasn't paying well or comparable to the same job in another company. No one is in this to get rich, as was recently asked. They are in it to provide for and take care of their families and much more. It was also mentioned in a recent email that I received that everyone has faced the same rise in cost. The only option is to find a better paying job, more than one job, or cut expenses. And that is exactly my point, that we need to retain employees, have competitive wages and benefits. Those are all part of it. I also do not believe that these increases represent, and I quote, slapping the taxpayer residents in the face. A majority of the city workers are taxpayers as well. I wonder if they would feel slapped in the face when over the years they had not received the proper increases. Over the last few years, we've witnessed many employees receiving special recognition at council meetings for those going above and beyond the duties of their jobs. We don't have average employees here, we have above average employees. I don't think we just want average, and does any employer just want the average employees? And the only other comment that I had was, there was also a comment made about retention bonuses in lieu of increases. I would ask you to work, I would wonder if anyone would work somewhere where there was not a potential to receive an increase in pay. I think we all know the answer to that. So those are my comments, and I'll open it up to committee members.
Oh, I just, new to this. My understanding is that there was quite a long period of time in which we weren't raising wages, is that correct?
That is correct.
And
Many
that has
years.
kind of put us behind the 8 ball as
Correct.
far as being competitive.
Correct.
Okay, that helps educate me a little bit, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure, Mr.
Mr. President. As an elected official, I feel like that when it comes to salaries, I really have to walk a very, very thin line. I represent the taxpaying citizen, of which I am one. Those citizens that voted for me for 2 terms, I represent them too. Those who didn't, I also represent them. I also represent management, administration of city government, and those decisions that continue to move our community forward. I represent those positions. I represent those city employees who do not have a labor organization representing them. And I also represent those employees who do have a labor organization representing them. And I think it's a very thin line that as an elected official we walk. Over the nearly 8 years that I've spent in serving on this body, we talk a great deal about finances, whether it be the annualized budget, whether it be individual projects or issues that have come before us. There's a great deal of discussion about the dollars that are spent here. And I feel like I'm personally responsible for my vote, whether I'm representing the taxpayer or I'm representing the community as a whole. And it's really interesting to me that I get to, as a member of this body at large, I'm not particularly more focused on a single representative area of the community. I get to represent the whole community. Of course, we all do in reality, but having the mere title of at large, I think makes me feel like that I represent every citizen. I don't care what side of town they live on, what their ethnicity is, what their financial positions are. I represent everybody. A few years ago, the law director quoted from Luke 12:48. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. God is the only person, the only entity that puts people in responsible positions. That's what it boils down to. That's the absolute bottom line. And I feel that in many cases we fail to recognize that. In Romans chapter 14, verses 13 through 15, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister. I try desperately to follow that, and that's not always easy, because when you feel like you're being attacked, you want to react to that. And clearly the Lord is saying, don't harm a brother or sister. Don't create circumstances that make it more difficult for them to do their job. We, as the governing body, the body that makes legislation for this community, need to be working together. We need to be doing our very due diligence in creating opportunities for this community, opportunities for the employees that we represent. I feel like there are stumbling blocks or obstacles that have been posed to the committee. I want to try to answer any and every question that is put to me. I've received one call on this salary issue. Just one. Now, that party that called me said, well, perhaps you haven't received any calls because everyone knows where you stand. And they feel like there's no reason to call you. I am as wide open today as I have ever been in regard to this matter. I'm not chairperson of the Salary Committee. I'm a member of that committee. I'm not the president of this body. I'm a member of this body. And I'm a tax-paying citizen that is just concerned as anyone could be in regard to taxes. I don't like it when I have to pay higher water and sewer bills. I don't like it when I can't pay $1.50 anymore for gasoline per gallon. I absolutely detest what's happening in Washington, D.C. There is nothing but obstacles and blocks being committed for the general citizen of the entire United States. There's nothing good coming out of Washington, D.C. In my health report that I'll talk about later, Mr. President, COVID was declared over. Well, isn't it interesting that last Friday, the White House said, you now can get free COVID tests. Now, I bring that up, not that that has anything to do with salaries, other than the fact we were crippled as human beings because of COVID. We were crippled because of improper information coming out of DC, where our leaders were supposed to be providing us with the absolute best information they could. I have worked with Ms. May to try to provide the absolute best information we could. We don't have a staff. We have worked together on Saturdays, all hours of the night, Monday through Friday, since this was originally assigned by the council president. Untold hours have been spent trying to glean information from a whole myriad of bodies. OML, which we depend on greatly, as do a lot of cities, for a lot of information, a lot of different resources, assistance. They have perhaps 70% of the data that we need to evaluate things such as salaries. We have provided you, as members of this body, with all the information that we have. I do have some comments on a couple of the positions. In my opinion, parity should exist between police and fire. And in this particular instance, what is being recommended is the police and fire chiefs draw the same amount of salary, or at least have the same pay scale to work from. The law director's position. If you note on the spreadsheet, he's making $52 more than the average of the comparable cities. He must be overpaid. That seems like a reasonable question if we want to be an average community. I don't want to live in an average community, and New Philadelphia is not average. A lot of the law directors that we have either contacted or we've contacted someone in their governmental entity, they are allowed to do their private business. They can handle private cases. Ours is not allowed to do that. We said you can't do that. We instructed him not to do that. And he asked specifically at that moment, can I finish the cases I'm working on? And we permitted that. And he took the position then, I will not accept any new personal cases. So when you begin to look at some of the law director positions, they're in the 6 digits. But they also get to make another 6 digits plus because they handle their personal cases. As an elected official, I cannot tell one of our employees, if you don't like it, you can find another job. I can't do that. We've got money invested in these employees. Many of the employees have to have state certifications. Many have to have state licensure. And you would be amazed, I think, if you actually dug into it, to see how many employees have to be certified just to get into their position, much less to move ahead. For years, the nearly 8 years that I've been on this body, I've been asked from time to time my thinking on a particular project, whether it be buying a particular piece of equipment, if it's talking about some preventive equipment. I was actually excited when the president assigned me to safety. That's my background. That's what I know. That's what I'm into. And at the end of this calendar year, I will have been, including my 8 years with the city of New Philadelphia, nearly 40 years. And I think that's time to hang it up, to put somebody in this seat, one that's younger. There's certainly nobody in this room any older than I am. And the day that my office concludes at midnight, I'll be 6 days short of becoming an octogenarian. I can't even comprehend what that is. But I feel like I've been honest, truthful, and worked very diligent for this community. I would hope that you would recognize the amount of work that has gone into this single-page spreadsheet. It hasn't been done without thought. In the one phone call that I received, I was told my wife has received a 2.5% salary increase, and I received a 3% salary increase. Well, I don't know if that individual's employer has kept up over the years with continual smaller raises, or if they didn't get a raise for years, such as our non-bargaining employees. I can go back to a mayor, a previous administration, and I'll tell you, in my opinion, the reason we're in this salary situation is because of poor decisions made by prior administrations. When a mayor stands up and says publicly, I don't deserve a raise, therefore the non-bargaining employees don't deserve a raise. What kind of asininity is that? What do you base that on? Because you personally have other sources of income? You don't think the city employees, those that are not represented, deserve a raise? and then to go for years and recognize I'm still not gonna give them a raise. And in so doing, those that are bargaining employees are represented by a bargaining entity. That gap continues to close and close and close. When we began to address this some 3.5 years ago, we had employees that were actually making more than their supervisors. And I want to see one person stand up and raise their hand and say, I don't mind that happening. If I've got employees working for me and they make more money than I do, I don't have a problem with that. I want to see somebody stand up and tell me that. I want to see somebody walk through this door and say, hey, I've got employees that make a whole lot more money than I do, and I'm glad. I pontificated enough, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. We'll start taking comments from council administration. Mr. Lonzer?
I'm kind of agreeing a lot with Mr. Holland says there, and I've been around council for quite a few years too, and I've seen the previous administrations that completely neglected the non-bargaining units, and that's why this 7% looks like a 7%. I mean, and then I think in 2023, I mean, everybody goes to the grocery store, everybody's buying their gasoline. 7% is not preposterous to me. I mean, in the big scheme of things, I think that's right where, with your guys' research and what I saw on that stuff, I applaud you guys for all the work you did. You did a lot of work on this. And I got a question for the auditor, though, is from what I understand, that we're good for the numbers this year on this, right?
For 24, I
for
can't
20.
say 25 and 26.
Well, no, but that's where I was gonna go to is, we can, if we don't have the money, we can go back and visit this next year, correct? I mean, this is.
Yeah, correct,
This is non-bargaining, so we can visit it 3 months from now if we need to.
correct.
Okay. So that's-
Thank you. That was gonna be my question of her as well, so I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lonzer. Mrs. Ramos?
Oh, I think
Oh.
Beth had a,
It's been mentioned a couple times about non-bargaining not having raises for years. Well, I've been here 28. I can recall 16 years of no raises, and some of those no raises went 2 and 3 years at a time. So just
Thank
to
you.
put my insight into that, so.
Thank you. Mrs. Ramos?
yes. I wrote the memo, that email that you mentioned and Mr. Holland mentioned, and I do want to say no one's attacking you. That was not the intent. Clearly, I did not write it that way. I in fact started, thank you for the data. I'm glad to see some research has been done and openly shared with the rest of the council. And I did ask for more data point to be listed. And you could pick from that data point. But very importantly, there is a big difference between charter and statutory cities. We are a statutory city. Out of this list of comparable quote-unquote cities, 11 were chartered, 4 were statutory. They were picked, apparently from what I could see, because I looked them all up. I did some research on my own too, from all over the state, different parts of the states. A lot of them were suburbs, charter suburbs of huge cities. Loveland was Cincinnati, and they were in a huge retail district. So there you have the tax base, the income of the city that also comes into play, and that's one of the data points I asked to be looked at. And as far as median income, which Mr. Ricklick mentioned last time, I did look that up on city data, city-data.com. There's also census.gov, which I mentioned in my email. And I looked those up as well. There's a big disparity in our average, or median, I say median because there's a difference, household income than these larger, big paying salary cities that are charters. So mainly what I would look at, and I think as a city council, we could all do research on this because it affects all of us and the budget. That would be whether the charter statutory, and you said one of the criteria was over 200 employees. And I got a list of those from Beth. And also the debt service, what kind of debt service are we looking at? And I've got a partial list of the debts that we have that we're paying. One of the other percentage in poverty, and we can look that up on city-data.gov, and I did most of that already. And other things that are important too, is especially the tax base and median income that we're looking at, percentage in poverty, and also to compare for that average raise that the citizens have gotten. Many have gone for years with no raises. I know that. Some get 1%, some 2%, some 3.5%. For our family, I got a 2%. I think my husband got a 1%. Okay, and that's pretty consistent. We're always behind with the raise and the health insurance cost. That's us, but again, like I said in my email, we can choose to stay where we are, and we do, because we feel that we're helping people. And cut expenses, or you get another job, add another job, which obviously I have. So I think that there are some things that if all council works together, we can do research. I understand that you don't have the staff. I understand that, neither do I. But we know where to look. And I was just wondering too, with the, because I went through the list here from Ohio Municipal League, statutory cities, and where they were located, and their population. So I wondered why, I guess Mr. Holland, because you probably picked the cities, right? To compare, or was that a joint effort?
We picked them together.
Okay. How did you choose the cities?
I believe I put in there that it was the population and the number of employees.
So some of the population here I noticed were the same as some of the statutory cities on the list, and they weren't chosen. So I wonder why
Well, I mean,
we choose one and not the other.
You have how many on there? Hundreds, right? So you can't put hundreds of them in there. I think that's a little overkill, putting hundreds of them in the sheet.
I
think
couldn't find that many actually
we
when I
got-
looked at the
We
list.
got a good sampling of comparable cities. My question to you is on the poverty that you are mentioning, like, I mean, if we would get that number, what would you do with it? Like, what's your figuring on that?
I'm thinking that really tells you a lot about your tax base, your income base. And also, the one city I mentioned, and there's one outside of Dayton, Englewood.
We're not asking for a tax increase here.
We will be. There's no way we can pay for this unless we do.
Mr.
The auditors have said we can this year.
This year.
Okay.
What about next
2024.
year?
Well, then we
2024.
revisit
Because
it.
they're looking at 4 years
Then we
here.
revisit it if we can. It's,
But they're
It's
looking for
non-bargaining.
4 years,
We're looking for 3 years.
3 years.
it's 3 years,
One,
but
two,
it's
three.
non-bargaining, so there's no,
Oh, yeah.
it's not a
3
bargaining
agrees.
contract where we're guaranteed to have to pay it for 3 years.
But the other legislation we passed,
Well,
Before
we're not
was
basing
4
it on the
years.
other legislation, we're basing it on this, which is proposed 24, 25, 26.
3 years.
Correct, and so 2024, the auditor has confirmed, and then the other 2 years, as we previously mentioned, if we're not able to at that time, we can revisit it and adjust.
Okay, the point is, we can all work together to do the research that we need to, and I don't think most of these cities are comparable. I looked them up, went to the city website, city, dash data.gov, did both sides of it, and I'm like, whoa, how can they be even comparable to New Philadelphia? A lot of them are like, not even close.
I just wanted to do a quick comment, I know I'm taking up
Sure.
time, but basically, when you do that research, also look up the cities that didn't get a pay raise for 16 out of 28 years.
28. I remember 16.
Because you gotta
Could've
account
been
for,
more.
you gotta account for that too, I mean, all the years of neglect, I think.
Well, that's not an outlier, I mean, sometimes that happens in the general public
But
as well.
All those things you have to take into consideration. Mr. Pace?
Mr. May, I think with this salary proposal, I've talked to Dean at length today. Giving a blanket raise makes me a little nervous because it creates a little bit of mediocrity, I think. Every job I've had has been performance-based. If you do a good job, you usually get a good raise. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as just giving everybody 7%. The number's tough to get to as far as what number we should go with, so just kind of on the fence.
And I agree with you, this would not even be as difficult as it has been had we had performance evaluations in writing like every other business does. And that's truly how it should be based, your performance, your raises, everything should be based on that. But I believe that you, Mr. Mayor, we've been talking about it for quite some time, and that's on the table in discussions at least, I hope.
If the salary is structured, if the salary scale is structured so that evaluations could be, possible, yeah, then we would do them.
But I have a question.
Mrs. Rollins?
I understood, this is the one we did before, right here. The percentage of raises I've, been granted over these last 4 years. I thought the salary was structured to do that at that time. In fact, that was the big discussion at that time.
No, that was legislation that told, all non-bargaining, this is what you'll get paid this year, following year, and the following year.
I understood they were supposed to
There
get
was,
it.
there was no flexibility given to the mayor.
I misunderstood that then.
Yeah, legislation in front of
And
you.
so this would be a question to Beth. So, if these raises are granted, and I think they're very large, at this time, 25.1% of the enterprise revenue, water, sewer, trash, was used to pay the salaries of the mayor, auditor, law director, mayor's administrative assistant, HR director, service director, and his administrative assistant, IT, and 2 assistants in the auditor's office. So that's a revenue that is paid from the bills by the residents for services, and the businesses, of course. So how much would that increase from the enterprise funds?
Well, just to stipulate, those should be allocated because each of those people work in all of those departments all the time. I could actually do more. I could put council in there, we could divvy up all the supplies and the operating stuff that goes, but it's just the salaries and not in only, and it's workers' comp and Medicare that follow. There's no pension or anything, well, there might be pension, but there's none of the, medical insurance or anything like that that follows through. So, 75% of that, 75% of the cost of those 8 or 9 people are coming out of general fund, and I think it's 6% from sanitation, so that's 81. And then water and sewers, 9 and 10, I don't remember which one. I mean, I don't remember which one is which.
Thank you. Lacey McKean is also here from Human Resources tonight, so I just wanted to thank you for coming and touch base a little bit, to see if you had anything to add to this.
Come over to the podium, would you, Lacey?
I guess all I can say is I do know on my end of things, retention and recruitment has been really difficult for all positions. So I guess right now raises are a big concern. It's hard to even fill our entry-level positions, as we all know, with sanitation laborers, and I don't think that we want to lose any of our top talent here, that pretty much take care of everything within the city and all their employees below them. I do know that we have a lot of very qualified individuals in the upper management positions, in these non-bargaining positions, and I know that we all love our job and like to work for the city. But obviously compensation is important these days. As we all know, everything is going up in prices. So I feel that Mrs. May and Mr. Holland have done a good job, and I'm here to assist in any way that I can. But I think so far that their work has definitely shown in, I think, positive ways. So I'm here for any questions ever, or any help that I can provide.
Thank you. Mrs. Gundy?
Median income was mentioned. I looked that up too, and I saw that they were estimates. And they were done by survey, so the information is only as good as the survey respondents' information that they're feeding into that survey, number one. Number two, the bargaining contracts. If we're using that $49,000 as a median income, the bargaining contracts are there and beyond. So that's another thing council needs to realize.
Thank you. Any additional comments from committee members, administration?
Mrs. May, I would just like to say that what you said in your opening statements was spot on. We're in a competitive environment now. Our people need to be paid a competitive wage compared to what our private employers in this town are paying right now, which is starting out $20 to $25 an hour. I can tell you some of our employees are being headhunted. This guy sitting next to me's had at least 2 job offers that I know of. And that's what a lot of municipalities are resorting to, is stealing from other municipalities, stealing talent from other municipalities because of wages. And I want you to remember too, when you weigh this, we are a municipal corporation. We're the city, but yeah, we're a municipal corporation. 9 square miles. We oversee the welfare of over 18,000 people a day. And that's providing them with city services and also safety, what are our safety forces. So, in the big picture, we are bigger than what some people may realize. And the responsibility that our non-bargaining people have on a daily basis is, it's that big. So I just want council to keep that in mind as you make your decision.
Thank you.
I just, one more quick,
Mr. Alonso?
other than, because it made me think about it with the whole performance review thing. Most of these employees, almost all of them on that list, between Beth Gundy and our auditor and the mayor, are at-will employees. So if the performance isn't there, they're at will. It's not a non-bargaining position. So if they're not doing the job and it's not up to par what the pay increases we bring in, they don't have to work for the city. You can find a better talent, but from what I've seen and everything, we have the talent. We want to keep the talent. And
Agreed.
that's,
Thank you. Mr. McAbey?
Thank you, Miss May. Miss May, I'm sorry. Lacey didn't touch on it, but, here about 2 months ago, we've had a opening for assistant superintendent, at the water department. And, had a gentleman come from, down to Cambridge area and, interviewed him. Everybody will tell you, Lacey and Scott did an interview, like home run. Went to the wage. Unfortunately, I can't do it because of that wage. But if we had that wage, we'd be sitting here with an assistant wastewater, or assistant water superintendent today. I can tell you that. Again, he had all the check marks, and again, like, Mr. Holland said, the, licensure that these individuals have, each one of the water and wastewater superintendents have a dual class 3s in water and wastewater. Those are unheard of. They're a dying breed with that. I still have my license, and I'll always have them because of the value that is meant through those. But again, that's just one case, and we've been looking for a gentleman for over a year, and that's on OtCode job websites. And I'd urge everyone here, council, to go to OtCode jobs. And you want to see what people's paying for the people that have licenses, you'll be shocked. You won't hear charter, this, that. All you'll see is what they make. And it's astounding with a license.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're gonna have to wrap it up for this evening. We only have a couple more minutes. Any other comments or action to be taken?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you and Dean for all the work your committees put in to come up with these salaries, because, it's something that's not necessarily pleasant we're gonna have to deal with, but it's something we have to do. And so I just want to commend you for your work, and we got a lot of due diligence to do and to move forward. So thank you for all the work you guys have put in so far.
We're gonna need legislation,
Okay.
and I'm asking the question, I guess, for our council to consider. We had agreed a number of years ago that we would not move forward at all without legislation. So it's my understanding, without that legislation, we cannot ask for, assuming that it were to pass out of committee tonight, we cannot ask for that to go forward until we have legislation to look at. Is that correct?
You have two options. You can wait until I present you with a proposed one and tweak it however you want, or you can make a motion for the law director to draft legislation in accordance with what's been proposed, and either way, you can do it either way.
But there could not be a first reading tonight.
No.
No, there's no way to be a first reading tonight
No.
because there's no legislation that
You need to get to
exists.
work then.
I called, I said, do you guys need anything?
Let, Mrs. May?
Yes.
Okay, the mayor very succinctly said he needs to have flexibility to have evaluations. The way this is written, it still sets in stone, yet once again, what happened before, and you don't have any flexibility for the evaluations if it's like this.
Okay. We're gonna adjourn for this evening, and I'm going to call another meeting on Wednesday prior to the special meeting that we have, so that we can work through this and move forward. So motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr.
This meeting of New Philadelphia City Council will now come to order. Would you please rise and remain standing for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Mr. Rippeth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you pray with me, please? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight to serve the citizens of this great city. We thank you for allowing us to live in a country where we can come together and discuss big issues and to discuss the needs of our population and do so in a way that drives us to better choices. Lord, we just always pray for your wisdom and your presence in all that we do. Lord, we pray that you'll always be with our fine servants, our public servants who are involved in safety services and the administration of this city, that you will always guide and direct them and keep them safe in all that they're doing. Lord, I would pray your blessing on this meeting tonight and that you would be in all of the decisions that we make. It's in the name of your Son, Jesus, that I do this. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to welcome all those here at City Council tonight and as well those who are watching by streaming. And so we'll get started with roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Present.
Mr. Lonzer.
Here?
Mrs. May.
Present.
Mr. Pace.
Present.
Mrs. Ramos.
Here.
Mr. Ricklick. Mr. Ribbit.
Present.
All right, let it be known that Mr. Ricklick has been excused from tonight's council meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review the agenda for tonight. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. President. I'd like to add proposed resolution 14, 2023 to tonight's agenda. If it's okay with you, I'd like to bundle a few of them together.
Sure.
Proposed resolution 14, proposed resolution 17, proposed resolution 18, and also proposed ordinance 20 to tonight's agenda.
All right. Do I have a second?
I would second that.
All right, Mr. Ripper, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mr. Ribbit.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, those additions have been approved. Now to entertain a motion to approve the agenda with those additions. Mrs. May, thank you. Need a second?
I would second that.
Thank you, Mr. Rippon. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Ribbit.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, our agenda has been approved. Everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes from our last council meeting. Excuse me. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve.
So
Mr.
moved.
Okay, Mr.
Mr.
Holland. Mr. Pace, second, okay. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Ribbit.
I would abstain.
All right, minutes have been approved. Correspondence, Ms. Courtright.
To Council and Administration from Law Director Fate dated September 22nd, 2022. This is an email titled Resolution 14, 2023. To President Kemp from Law Director Fate dated September 22nd, 2023. This is an email titled Please Assign to the Special and Contact Committee with Resolution 17 and Ordinance 21 as the attachments. President Kemp asked Mr. Lonzer to take these issues into his committee. To President Kemp from Law Director Fate dated September 23rd, 2023. This is an email titled Please Assign this NatureWorks application to the proper council committee. To President Kemp from Law Director Fate dated September 23rd, 2023. This is an email titled Please Assign to the Public Works Committee with Ordinance 20 and Resolution 18. As the attachments, President Kemp assigned this legislation to Mr. Lonzer's committee. Two council members from Councilwoman Ramos dated September 25th, 2023. This is a response to an email titled Resolution 15, 2023. And to Council and Administration from Mayor Day dated September 25th, 2023. This is the mayor's report, and that concludes correspondence for this evening, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Ms. Courtright. All right, we'll move into our administrative reports. First up, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members, fellow administrators, and guests. Couple things I want to touch on, that from the report I sent you earlier today, and then I want to yield the remainder of my time to Empowered Tusk. During the city administration's virtual meeting with the Ohio EPA on September 15th, OEPA officials said that they wanted to expand the testing area on Bank Lane Southwest to determine if PCE was present on the north side of the roadway. PCE is a common cloth dry cleaning fluid that entered the soil by water on the south side of the roadway during the Puritan Laundry fire in 1985. The City Health Department will be utilized if the OEPA determines that it would be necessary to do periodic testing inside of homes in that area. During the meeting, the OEPA officials also said that the Phase 1 environmental study on parcels east of Mill Avenue Southeast indicated that limited remediation is necessary. So that clears the way for the donation of that land to the city. Engineers from Burgess and Nipel of Columbus have a traffic study underway that will help determine the best way to redesign the Interstate 77 US 250 interchange in New Philadelphia. The engineers presented their preliminary findings last Thursday to the Tuscarawas County Economic Development Corporation's Board of Directors. The area they are studying is from the Stone Creek to North Dover exits on I-77, west of the interchange to Crooked Run Road, and east to the West High Bluebell Drive intersection. The engineers said that the intersection is what they term, the Bluebell intersection is what they term the hot spot in contributing to traffic congestion and safety issues at the interchange. And yeah, we can confirm that. I'm going to ask that their study be extended further west to include the 5 Points intersection. The timetable they presented to the TCED board had the study being completed by March of 2024. The recommendations will then be presented to the Ohio Department of Transportation for final design and funding applications. In the November 7th general election, Ohioans will vote on a proposal to legalize recreational marijuana, which in my mind would bring on a whole new set of societal and law enforcement problems in our city. Representatives of Empowered Tusk, formerly known as the Tuscarawas County Anti-Drug Coalition, have asked to address council tonight to give reasons to oppose passage of issue 2 and inform us of the group's efforts to raise awareness of the mental and behavioral health issues that would impact New Philadelphia and all of Tuscarawas County if that issue passes. President Camp would like to now yield the remainder of my time to Jody Salvo and Connie Limbacher, thank you, so that they can make their presentation to council. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Day. Floor is yours.
Very good. Can you all hear me? Is this?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's just for recording purposes, Jody.
I kind of figured that one. Thank you. Mayor Day, first I just want to say thank you for inviting us. Carrie Metzger was supposed to be here and was feeling a little under the weather today. But I appreciate New Philly, what y'all do as far as your commitment to addiction, mental health issues. And issue 2 is of major concern to Empower Tusk. Empower Tusk is a community coalition. It's a 12-sector coalition, and our work is to prevent youth substance use. I know in the past you've heard us speak around marijuana often because this issue continues to come round and round, but this is the first time we're really seeing it get to the ballot. So issue 2 will be on the November 7th ballot, and I just want to highlight some of our concerns about this legislation. Go ahead, Connie. First of all, I think there's 3 main buckets that we're going to look at, is the increased youth use and access, negative impact on businesses, and public safety concern. So if we want a thriving community, we absolutely need to protect our youth, so we'll talk about that. As far as negative impact to our businesses, we're going to have problems with employability. If you have safety-sensitive jobs, trying to find persons that can pass a drug test will continue to be problematic and grow in that problem. And Connie, what was the other one? And public safety concerns. Empower Task for years has been monitoring what's been going on since 2012 with Colorado. So we know in states that have legalized, we look at the drug driving impact.
And we also collect our own local data. So for the last probably 6 years at the Tuscarawas County Fair, we track trend data. And I know last year, 25% of people that indicated they used marijuana products said marijuana did not impact their driving. And we just collected about 1,000 surveys, and we're inputting those right now. But I can tell you the perception of harm around marijuana has gone up, gone down, and the usage has been reported going up in our community. Thank you, Connie. I'm going to give you a really quick 101 on marijuana just to help you understand the issue. The potency has changed over time. So the potency in a marijuana plant, you have two major components that we look at: THC, which gets you high, the psychoactive ingredient, and CBD, which has that medical promise. If you're older, my age or older, that 1990s marijuana was 3 to 4%. 2010, it hit about 10%, and that's where we saw addiction, cannabis use disorder, and then it has continued to rise. On the streets right now, the cannabis plant would probably be about 21 to 23% potency. What does that mean? As the potency rises, we see more problems with addiction. Now, what also has happened since legalization, besides smoke bud or flower or joint, whatever you want to understand this concept as, plant matter only really has gone up into those mid-20s, but concentrates have happened since legalization. So what that means is they extract the THC from the plant, they hit it with a high heat, and it changed forms. It becomes much more potent. So the potency of concentrates now goes up into the 90%, and that has happened with recreational marijuana. Go ahead, Connie. So right now, present day, this is what marijuana looks like in our communities, okay? So the top left, the top right might look the most familiar to y'all. All those vaping devices, if we have anyone in the school setting, Mr. Rippeth, that's what they look like in schools. And those yellow forms is what it looks like in the streets. So those yellow forms are really in the 80 to 90% THC. Those vaping devices, which the schools are challenged with every day, are really from the 35% to 70%. It means it's a different drug. Go ahead, Connie. However, with legalization, what you just saw changes to this. So the products change, the potency changes. That's what happens with legalization. The problem with this is any of the edibles and drinks, so the gummies and stuff, their potency starts in the 30% and goes upward. Where this is problematic, would our children prefer to smoke plant matter or eat or drink these products? They're going to go for the eating and drinking, and these products will always be more potent. So Addiction 101, this is how it works with alcohol, works with marijuana. The younger the age of use, before your brain is fully developed, the greater your chance of addiction. So if someone waits till the age of 21 to consume alcohol, to use other substances, if they do not have a family history, most likely will not struggle with addiction and dependence. Could they? Absolutely, yes. But the potential reduces. However, the problems we have in our community, our young people are already addicted to vape devices, vaping nicotine. Many of those devices, you can put cannabis oil into those devices. So before, we didn't see youth initiation on marijuana like we are seeing right now. I see Mr. Rithis say this is absolutely true. But because young people are comfortable with that vaping of nicotine, there's not a huge jump to start vaping cannabis oil, especially when you have access to it. So with legalization, our young people will have more access and availability. And that means there will be a decreased perception of harm because these products look friendly and they look nice. And when adults already said medicine, they already have a decrease perception of harm. So when these products in our community, our young people will use them. And that is what addiction research is going to show us. Go ahead. So issue 2, it allows for 2.5 ounces of marijuana. So a person can possess this amount. If you're not familiar with marijuana, this is a lot of marijuana. So each person can have this. They can also grow 6 marijuana plants in their home for an individual, 12 plants for a household. Go ahead, Connie. This is the size of a marijuana plant. You can also use multiple crops out of this, so 3 to 4 crops per year. This is so much marijuana that this should be very concerning, especially if it's in households, because I'm not confident how an adult is going to secure this from young people. There is no household that consumes 12 plants of marijuana. So where is the rest of this product going? There's probably being quite difficult for adults also to conceal this from young people. I also want to let you know, these are products that have been in our community. They're not sold here. They're coming from other states. But these are marijuana products. So you're going to hear a lot of sound bites of issue 2 is for adults over the age of 21. Does this look like they're marketing 21-year-olds? We had these products at the county fair this week, and I can't tell you how many young people were putting out the vape devices. And then they would say, well, what's wrong with these? Because they're not seeing that it says stoner, or they're not seeing the little marijuana leaf on it. Very problematic. We already have problems in our school districts with marijuana. We have them with vaping nicotine, and we also have them with marijuana products, and we've had gummies in our school districts as well. Go ahead. So the impact of legalization on communities, it's going to be youth access and use, increase in the illicit market, behavioral health concerns, traffic safety, healthcare costs, emergency room visits, prenatal use, and impact to business. Go ahead. So we have really looked at the research. If any of y'all know Kerry Metzger, he spends most of his day looking at research from other states. What we do know is states that have recreationally legalized, we have seen youth use in every single one. The impact, decreased perception of harm, increased use. One rather large study says an 8% drop in IQ, and if you know anything about IQs, that is significant, and that's permanent. Research suggests that between 9 and 30% of those who use marijuana may develop a cannabis use disorder or dependence, and that's 1 in 11 when we're looking at young people. So this graph right here just really shows legalized states in illegal states. And you can, it just screams out at you that with our legalized state, the percentages drastically jump. So cannabis use disorder in children, 12 to 17, increased 25% after recreational use, and that's in Colorado. So these are just some stats from Colorado. I won't go through all of them, but there was a 400% increase in ER visits for children 0 to 9. That is because those gummies, if they're not secured, are ridiculously high potency marijuana. So it's just misuse, non-storage. We already struggle with that with Empower Tusk with medications. So you always see we have the drug deactivation bags, we have the take back days, we have safety lock boxes because we're trying to keep medications of use out of our young people. This will be much more challenging. Go ahead back one more time, Connie. That marijuana, vaping, and dabbing are up 40% with our young people. That is that really high concentrate, which is like 90% THC. We see in states that have legalized, we see psychosis, and they have a medical term called scromiting. So we can see the actual effects of these high potency marijuana products. So we see people not securing, and then we saw a 14.8%, almost 15% increase on youth under the age of 15 using in the past 2 years. In Tuscarawas County, Our age of initiation of vaping nicotine is 13, which is in 7th grade. So I think that statistic would probably be very comparable to what we would see in our state. What we also know, I know you all did a great job of creating an ordinance to keep dispensaries out of New Philly City. Goshen unfortunately put the dispensary on High Street. Kind of funny, it's on High Street. The way issue 2 is written is medical dispensaries will be able to flip into recreational. So that should be very concerning to all of us because it's going to be right here on High Street. So things that we'll need to be looking at is if issue 2 would pass, it will then go back through the state legislature, hopefully to put some guardrails on this. I can promise you Empower Tusk will kick and scream, and we will be at the State House on this issue. But advertising will be something that we'll need to consider here in New Philly, because one of the things we know, signage really does have an impact on youth perception of harm. So we would want to minimize what we see on High Street at the medical dispensary. Connie, go back one more time. So this says that the Journal of Addiction 2019 says just living near a marijuana dispensary increases the likelihood of marijuana use. And we've kind of looked at that research. It's just the very placement of it, because the placement brings in people that would not normally use, might use just because of the legality. So a dispensary in your community just creates more use. Go ahead. It also creates, and I saw that on a slide, it normalizes use. So if adults are using, it's recreationally legal, they're using in their homes, they have the products, it just makes young people not see this as harmful. Behavioral health concerns. This is interesting with marijuana. A lot of people will hear, I'm going to try marijuana as medicine for anxiety, for depression, for PTSD. However, the caveat in that is there's medical promise with CBD, high potency THC, you actually exacerbate the problem you're trying to solve. So the research is still not completely there, and I really caution all states, why are we making laws when our emerging research is still coming out? Because it's not looking good as far as anxiety. Suicide, there is such a huge connection between high potency marijuana and youth suicide, and suicide in general, but in particular youth suicide. And again, we have a mental health crisis here in Ohio, so it kind of blows my mind. So it's one of those things that unless someone understands the issue, they need to understand, are we looking for CBD or are we looking at marijuana? And they consider high potency marijuana in all literature 10% THC or more. I told you we are talking about 35 to 90% THC. So the research does not even vet out what that means for undeveloped brain or really for anybody for long-term chronic use. So behavioral health, addiction, we already struggle with addiction. Association with other drugs, depression, anxiety, suicidality, psychosis, schizophrenia. We have a lot of research on all of these. We also need to understand not everybody that uses marijuana is going to go on to use other drugs, but Sheriff Campbell and Judge Tamaka say it all the time. Everybody they know. I think Judge Tamaka says, with the exception of one person that she has ever seen before her on drug charges, has started with marijuana, so, and then moved on. So it's just something that we need to know, that not everyone will go on, but we certainly can expect to see problems with it. Go ahead, Connie. So emergency rooms visits, Alaska saw a 45% increase. Colorado has seen 101%. I would tend to say Colorado has seen more because they were the first ones to go through these doors, so they did not have as much in place when they started out with legalization. Road and traffic safety, 50% of all Oregon drivers assessed tested positive for marijuana. Recent studies have found that marijuana may double the risk of a car crash involvement. You can see the increase in fatalities and accidents. I see law enforcement in the back of the room. This is a problem, correct? And again, I just did the marijuana surveys at the fair. I have to think every young person does not think it affects their driving. And we would laugh because they're filling out their survey saying, it makes me more focused. I drive slower, not understanding that they are impaired. Increased crime. Carrie Metzger and myself have been at the State House faithfully as the Senate has been talking about some of these issues. And the talking point you get from the cannabis industry, the lobbyist, is we're doing this to mitigate the illicit market. Every single state that has legalized has had a thriving, rising illicit market. I was on a panel with Tom Herron, who is really the head of the legalized efforts, but with someone who was also in the Los Angeles market in California. In 2021, they had I think it was a huge bailout to the to the recreational market because they couldn't compete with the illicit market. And I can get you the number. It was like a really high number. So basically what was going on is the taxpayers were helping the recreational market because they couldn't compete. So anytime you hear it gets rid of the illicit market, it actually makes it thrive. Because if you're dispensing at a dispensary, there is going to be tax on that product. The illicit market will always come in. They will offer a less expensive product, and most likely it will be tainted because when you're selling drugs, you need a more potent product because you want someone to use your product, which is really problematic for our young people because if we're not selling to 21 and older and they want to use, there's a much greater chance that they'll use off that illicit market, and already our drugs are tainted here in our community. We can have fentanyl in a vape device, we can have it in an edible, because we just don't know the source that it's coming in. So please do not buy into this soundbite. So in Power Task, we really work on, let's keep our youth safe. Let's protect them. Let's know that marijuana absolutely can become a barrier for them to reach their full potential. So that's kind of what we want to share with y'all. Connie? So as far as what can be done, we're just really asking people to learn about this issue, talk to other people. We would ask you to really think about how you would vote on issue 2. We are hoping that we can educate Tuscarawas County. We have scheduled to go in every single civic organization. I think Carrie scheduled about 8 civic organizations. We're a Human Resource Association, all the city councils, township trustee meetings. So we are willing to speak anywhere and provide education. And even at the county fair this week, if someone smokes weed, we can have an effective conversation that we agree together that young people should not be using marijuana. We also sometimes steer adults, like if you want to use it, go to the medical dispensary because at least we know it's safe, but it's not going to turn these products into things that are very youth appealing to our young people and are going to be a stumbling block. That's all I have. Do you all have any questions? Murday.
Jody, I have a 9-month-old chocolate Labrador who loves to eat anything. What happens to pets if they eat these edibles?
You know what? I feel like I've read so much on marijuana research, I have not looked at that. But as you say that, I will, because it has any negative effect. Voters will probably be more likely to oppose it if it hurts a pet.
I'm just saying, my dog
If we're
eats
talking a
anything.
child, we might not have the reaction, so I will look that up.
And he's just like any other dog, and, if the dog sees it laying on the table
Yeah,
and nobody's watching, he's gonna take a taste.
I will absolutely research that.
Jody,
Yes, sir.
is this issue on the ballot?
It is.
Is it posed as a yes or no question, Or is it one of those you vote no if you intend to get it, or?
This one is not tricky at all. A no is a no and a yes is a yes, and it is issue 2. I have federal dollars in me, so I can't give you a more specific answer than that, but no is a no. Sure.
I just
Ms.
want
Ramos.
to add, anybody that wants to look at your ballot ahead of time and read it, because there are very important issues on the ballot. The issue 2 is a law, right? Issue 1 is to amend the Ohio Constitution. But you can go to the board, the Tuscarawas County Board of Election, look up your name, and your ballot will be there. And so you can read it, study, and before you go, you can know what you're voting on.
Thank you. I will also
Thank you.
let you know, as Empower Tusk, we are not able to do any lobbying because we do have some federal dollars that pump through us. Carrie Metzger, though, as a private citizen, is working together to develop a political action committee, and a political action committee then can do yard signs and mailers and radio ads. So we are looking right now, the political action committee separate from Empower Tusk, of raising funds to support efforts. And we did that in the 2015-2016 cycle. And Tuscarawas County had the largest resounding no out of the state of Ohio, and I know it was from those efforts. So we also, as individuals, if anyone would want to contribute to the political action committee, I can steer you in that direction, but that is not part of Empower Tusk. Any other questions, thoughts? Okay, I will let you know, one effort that we're doing is we're bringing in probably one of the best national speakers October 9th, and the Performing Arts Center is going to host that event. So we have most Tuscarawas County districts coming at 9 o'clock to listen to the presenter, and then at 1 o'clock, all Buckeye is going to go over to attend the presentation, and it should be very informative. We are working to see if we can get a location for the evening to host an adult session. That talk will be very different, how she speaks to our young people and to adults. If we can solidify a date, we will certainly let you know. And as community leaders, I would really encourage you to come because she's going to be much more well-versed than I, and I think you'll find it very insightful.
That's our council meeting night.
Oh.
The 9th, you said, right? Monday.
You know what? The PAC usually will live stream for us, so maybe I can see if I can get a recording if you would care for us to share that out with you, because she will be a great speaker. Okay? Thank you so much for your time, and
Thank you, Jody.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Connie, for coming
Thank you.
tonight and enlighten us. So,
Yeah, that's fine. And just close the computer top. I'll deal with it after the meeting.
Don't call me.
No, I won't.
all right, thank you. All right, we'll move on. Service Director, Mr. McAbery, you gotta follow that.
Yeah, I always gotta follow the tough ones. Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. On Thursday, September 14th, we did our final walkthrough on Glen Drive, and happy to report that it is finished. They may come in and do some more seeding, depending on how it grows in this year. But at that time, there was about 70% growth. They need 80 to be okay through our standards. I believe we'll have that. We still have a month or so of growing period. So again, that project is completed, which is great. And as we know, tonight, Resolution 14, 2023 is on the agenda for pass at first reading. I urge council to pass that because we'd like to do a phase 2 up there and continue that project and the progress we've made so far. Also, as I reported before, we had our walkthrough with Salery Company for our small cities paving. If anybody was out on 16th Street today, they started to mill that. After talking with Steve, the foreman, They'll go to Wabash tomorrow. They believe they'll be there milling that for Tuesday and Wednesday. They'll go over to Ray Avenue that they need to do yet, and they'll mill that on Thursday. On Friday, they believe they're gonna cut a couple butt joints in at I guess it would be Front Street and on Bank Lane and over at South Broadway. They look to do that on Friday. And then after that, there's approximately 165 different repairs that are called out in the project. What you see from, you know, a bird's eye view or from a view there as you're walking it. So they'll start repairs before they pave. So they're gonna start repairs. I urge them to possibly, if they could, to go down on Mill Avenue, as we know we have it closed, to make it easier, and maybe not easier on the traffic, but easier on the guys being out there, and that's our big concern as far as out there making those repairs. So they look to start the repairs next week. That'll approximately take 2 weeks before they start coming in and actually doing the paving, before we see some paving. But again, meet with him every 2 weeks. So again, I'll meet with him and have more report as far as the next 2 weeks moving forward at our next council meeting. Also, I know we talked over Flushing last time a little bit. I think it was Mr. Ricklick that asked me about Flushing. It was supposed to be happening this week. We're gonna postpone that till March. We was hoping to have the 250 water line under construction by then and milled underneath Route 250. As we all know, that exposes weaknesses in our system. Couldn't afford to have that weakness exposed and have one feeder going down the south side. We only have one other line heading that way, and I'm not treating people to bottled water when the other line goes down. So I'd much rather wait till March, and that's what we're gonna do. So again, when that date comes out is when we're gonna have it. I'll be announcing it to council at that time. And with that 250 water line, I had talked with the engineer today, and I believe that should still take place. Probably at the end of October is what he's saying at this time. So we hope to get that project done yet this year. Also today, we had our pre-construction meeting for the Take 5 oil change, which you all know that's next to Hog Heaven. They look to tear the building down. They think it'll probably take 2 to 3 weeks to tear the building down and then start all the groundwork. And then after talking with the general contractor down there, they give him 90 days to put in the oil change place. So if you do the math, it's looking like the first of 2024, that building should be done. Also tomorrow, there'll be the Board of Elections building on West High. We'll have the first pre-construction meeting on that spot. So again, I'll have more to report on that at the next council meeting. But I believe once they get through the SWIP plan, I believe they'll work on that. Probably by the end of this week here, they'll get started on that. Also, if you look at, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but the Love Tusk throughout the county. There was a presentation last week at Kent State Tusk. Everybody comes in on Sunday or Monday, whenever you may notice it. Our sculpture will go up in the Gavin's Quadrant on Sunday. It's due to go in up there by Mr. Dawson from Strasburg. Man, I hate to not give him a plug. Synergy Signs, thank you, Mayor. So that should be in the quadrant up there. Everything's laid up there for him. He just got to attach and do some things. Again, so look for that on Monday. It'll be there Sunday night, but whenever you look, take a look at it. Also, Franklin Square, the big Stormlight project, down there Friday. The big transfer spot right now is at Mill Avenue and Bank Lane. As you can imagine, 5-foot pipe coming in, 4-foot coming in, and a 12-inch coming in at the side there. That was completed on Friday. The issue we're having there is going to be the paver is not scheduled to come in there for 2 weeks. So, yeah, bear with us. And believe me, I hear it. So, again, though, that is set, pipe is set. They need to start moving out towards 4th Drive there. So as soon as they get there, we'll be there. But unfortunately, the paver won't come in for 2 weeks. That's scheduled as we talked on today. But again, Friday, the big transition was made. They did start getting a pipe out of that manhole. Again, but the paving's gonna set us behind. But again, we would've had it closed off anyways because of Salery Company coming in and do those repairs. So I look for it, again, it's 2 weeks, and, but the repairs will all be made. They're gonna, and then the paving is gonna be done on 16th, Washington, and that's gonna be our last stretch to do, and we'll be done with paving again. And as we know, we still have some of ours to do yet, which they'll be in, at the end of the 3rd week of October when I talked to Jeff Gesner from Newton's. We still have some things to do. We know this quadrant over here, by the courthouse, that whole T intersection that looks like the moon surface, and it does look rough. That'll get done yet this year. Forbes down there, 6th Street down in the northeast section. But again, those still be on the paving list, and I'll report more on that at the next council meeting. That's the end of my report.
Hey, that's quite a report. Any questions for the service director? Yes, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. McAbeer, how far up Glen Drive, once that nightmare is fully taken care of, how far up will you be going?
It's approximately 1,450 feet. We wanted to go 850 on this one, but we tracked it down to 750. So we're gonna fall short. It's about 450 on this project. So we're at 1,200. So we're gonna slowly climb up that hill. But again, it's, and I didn't report, or maybe I have, but we got in there to the, and I did report on this. We got in there, once we opened it up, as everybody knows, it was terrible subsoil, and we had to have someone come in and really look at it, and added surface drains to it. So there's drains on the sides and curb for it coming in, but we also put them in the road themselves, and a geofabric to catch some more water surface from penetrating down into that subsoil. It's done right this time, and but the overruns with it was about $120,000 in that project, which was already high to begin with. So that's why we scaled it back, and we're gonna make it a 3-step process now, unfortunately.
Is it Glen Drive that has the 2 hydrants that are 20 feet apart?
Yeah, yeah,
Are you going as far as those hydrants?
yes.
Is there a possibility to take one of those hydrants out,
Yes,
which gives a false sense of security, another previous administration false bad decision?
correct. That whole place is. It's plastic line, it's in the rear of the houses, sewer lines in the rear of the houses. I've had a blockage up there when I was in the sewer department. We got a machine that's as big as this room. How do you go in someone's backyard? The whole thing has been exactly what you're saying.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions for the service director? Move on, safety director, Mr. Popham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. Just kind of a quick snippet, going back in the police department, the equipment that the chief and Captain Rossi came to request, that's been ordered, and most of the equipment's been installed. Chief Bahovey has came up with a new design on police cars, and 2 of the cruisers, I believe, are currently marked with the way that the rest of them eventually will all be as we go down the road. Also in the police department, we've just recently, just the last couple of days, we've hired a new employee to replace the chief that left. And I believe today was the first day for a new clerk in the police department. In the fire department, we received notice that one of the firefighter medics is leaving. So yesterday, we had a firefighter medic that was in the wings waiting, which is one of the few times that we had somebody waiting. And that person was sworn in, and we're just kind of slowly catching up. So that's all I have.
Any questions? Yes, Mrs. Ramos.
Just real quick, the new design for the, police cars,
Yes.
I saw it on Facebook, I like it a lot, because you know it's a police car. Are they gonna like repaint the other ones that we have in the fleet with the
Thank-
new design?
I think at this point, we're not going to, as they're replaced, we'll do the new design.
Okay,
I always kind of feel that when you do that with the old, yes, it kind of brings the whole fleet to look alike, but on the other side of it, it's kind of like you're wasting, the car is only gonna be maybe in service for another year, and then it's gonna, so you've invested that money, and, I'd just rather kind of, as the new ones come, all the new ones will now look, and the old ones will just get phased out, so,
okay, yeah, they're really hard to recognize,
yes.
I think.
Yep.
Yes,
Mr. Pace?
Is it a wrap or are they painted?
It's a
I think it's
decal.
a wrap.
It's a
isn't it?
wrap.
It's a
Wrap.
decal
Yeah.
kind of a deal,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, Mr. Pate.
I just want to commend you on Officer Dematillo. I can't tell you how impressed I am with him. I've got 2 kids in the school system. I see him all the time, everywhere. I see him walking the perimeter, interacting with students at the middle school and high school. I've seen him in gym class, the way that he introduced himself to the community with the first day of school sign, I thought was wonderful and something that everybody can relate to. I dropped my one son off at the elementary school the other day. He is there with holding the door open, talking to them as they're coming in. And I see him everywhere all the time, and I think he's a super positive influence and role model, and it just fills me with tremendous sense of safety when it comes to my children and the job that he's doing. And I just want to thank you and commend you for the selection that you and the chief made on that.
Well, and then that's the other reason that we're trying to go now for the second one,
Yeah.
just because that, there are so many schools that he has to spread himself around. 2 will be better than 1, so
Well,
it's work in progress.
He definitely has a large presence, and it's very impressive.
He'll do a good job.
Yes, he does.
All right, thank you, Mr. Popham.
Thank
Move on to the auditor, Mrs. Gundy.
Thank you, I have no report.
All right, on to Mr. Gerber, the treasurer.
No report, sir.
All right, move on to law director, Mr. Fate.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many of you know, I wear a couple different hats. As law director, I am in charge of 3,500 criminal prosecutions in municipal court, because and we have the highest volume because we represent not just the city of New Philadelphia, but the 13 surrounding townships. In addition to that, I'm also the civil attorney for the city. And to that end, I've got 2 hearings coming up that I'll be representing the city in the next couple of weeks. One is a mediation hearing on a workers' comp case that goes all the way back to when I was in high school, and it's still going for some reason. And the other one is I'll be participating in a trial representing the city on a foreclosure issue on delinquent taxes. In addition to that, I am requesting that, those are what's on my plate coming up. And in addition to that, I am requesting an executive session to discuss a matter that's required to be kept confidential by law, so that I can advise counsel as their legal counsel.
Anyone want to make a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Need a second. Mr. Pace. In discussion by council? Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
yes.
Mr. Rippeth.
Yes.
Oh, and Mr. President, I also wanted to add, it's my understanding that Mr. Similek and Mr. Kreinbell are unopposed in their elections, and if the president so pleases, I would like to invite them to attend the executive session as well.
Sure. It's fine, so guys are invited. All right, move on to our board commission reports. Planning Commission, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning Commission will be meeting on Tuesday, October 10th at 1 p.m. here in council chambers, and we're still working on the agenda.
All right. Mr. Mr. McAbeer, Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Board of Zoning Appeals, meeting we had scheduled for the 12th, had 2 variants requests to be heard, and first time ever since I've been here, neither showed up. We did have one scheduling conflict on the one, and the other one did not show up. We have heard back from the one. We're gonna try to schedule a special meeting if it's available to our members, and I reported that at that time.
All right. Airport Commission, Mr. Lonzer.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Airport Commission will be meeting in council chambers at 6 p.m., October 10th.
All right. Park Board, Mr. Pace.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Park Board met this past Wednesday, and only one thing to report, the basketball courts at the park and on the south side were completed with the warranty work. They didn't seal properly, so they came in and fixed them, and they look nice again. So
Yeah, they,
that's all I got. Thank you.
all right, move on to Health Board, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Health Board met on Wednesday, September the 13th, here in council chambers at noon. And some of the items that were covered, get all the notes here. It keeps saying Face ID. Let's get on with the right numbers.
You
Don't
sure
break
you
the-
want to
don't
show your
break it.
face, huh?
Here we go. The Health Department has received workforce development grants in the amount of $370,000 and an enhanced operations grant for $83,000. And this is part of what covers or helps cover salary costs for the health department. And COVID is not over. Irrespective of what comes out of Washington, we've had 22 new cases, none of which have been hospitalized. But it's a reality, it's still here with us. We have free test kits, COVID health test kits here in the health department. And the federal government has announced, as of last Friday, that there are additional COVID tests available for U.S. citizens. We also have flu shots available for New Philadelphia citizens if they will contact the health department. Those shots are free. And be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Holland? All right. Here now, we'll move on to our council committee reports. Mr. Ricklick is not here. Public Works and Economic Development, Mr. Lonsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Works and Economic Development Committee met this evening at 6:30 p.m. We had some general housekeeping resolutions and ordinances proposed for tonight. The first one was Resolution 14. It's a grant opportunity for the Phase 2 of Glen Drive, which the Service Director talked about earlier. We voted unanimously to add that to tonight's agenda, and we're asking during the legislative process to suspend the rules and pass that on a first reading. The next item we discussed was proposed Resolution 17, and this involves getting our paperwork in order for the county auditor. We also voted unanimously, and this is another one that we need to have done by the end of the month so that the county can get their work done. So we asked to suspend the rules and pass that one on a first reading. The next item was proposed Resolution 18. This has to do with a grant opportunity from the ODNR for our Southside Park Phase 2. We voted unanimously to add that to our tonight's legislation. We're going to ask for 3 readings on that. And the last item was proposed Ordinance 2023, and this is in regards to service replacement for the bridge over Tuscarawas River, State Route 259. It's basically, we have nothing, no dog in the fight, no money involved with the city, and they just have to have permission because some of it lies into the city. But we voted unanimously to add that to tonight's agenda and hold that for 3 readings also.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lonzer. lose my voice here. Safety, Health, and Service, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. No formal report this evening.
All right, zoning and annexation, Mrs. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
All right, thank you. Salary, Mrs. May.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Salary Committee met this evening at 6:45 to discuss proposed increases from non-bargaining personnel. We had lengthy discussions, and everybody's had great input and great comments, and hopefully we'll get this moving forward and see a resolution to it soon, and we adjourned at probably exactly 7:30, I would imagine. That's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. Cemetery, Mr. Pace.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report this evening.
All right, contact and special, Mr. Rippeth.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report tonight, but I will be getting with the clerk of council to set a meeting before our next regularly scheduled council meeting to address a couple of matters of legislation in our committee.
All right. All right, visitors' comments. The floor is now open for visitors' comments. Anyone wishing to address council should rise, state your name and address, and address all comments to the chair. You will have 5 minutes. Anybody wishing to address council tonight? All right, hearing none, council comments. Any council members have any comments for this evening? All right, hearing none, we'll move into our legislative agenda.
Ordinance number 13, 2023, an ordinance by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia, Ohio, amending and adjusting the permanent appropriations ordinance for the year 2023 and declaring an emergency, third reading.
Is there any action we're taking on this legislation tonight? Yes, Mr. Lanzer.
I move that we pass ordinance 13, 2023.
Do I have a second? Mr. Pace. All right, any discussion by the community, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Rippeth.
Yes.
All right, 13, 2023 has passed.
Ordinance number 16, 2023, an ordinance by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia, Ohio, to permanently rezone the following parcels owned by the Little Theater of Tuscarawas County Incorporated in the City of New Philadelphia, Ohio, from residential to business zone and declaring an emergency, third reading.
Is there any action we're taking on this legislation tonight? Mr. Pace?
I ask that we pass ordinance number 16, 2023.
Yes.
Point of order.
Yes, Mrs. Ramos.
The public hearing for the rezoning is October 9th because we had to give the 30-day notice.
Disregard that
All right,
request.
so we will have the public hearing, so everybody's aware
October
on
9th.
October 9th.
Yeah.
All right,
And they are aware, they are aware.
so all the mailings have gone out.
Yes.
All right, next.
Ordinance number 20, 2023, the following ordinance is enacted by the City of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, hereinafter referred to as the Local Public Agency, LPA, in the matter described project description, whereas the state has identified the need for the described project. The project includes replacing the wearing surface on Bridge Tusk-259-0011, SFN 7905785, carrying State Route 259 over the Tuscarawas River. The project will also update the bridge railing and perform other small repairs to the bridge. The entire cost of the project, PID 114351, will be borne by the Ohio Department of Transportation. First reading.
Is there any action we're taking on this legislation tonight? Yes, Mr. Long?
Oh, no action on ordinance 20.
Okay, next.
Resolution number 12, 2023, a resolution by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia, Ohio, to commend Police Chief Michael Goodwin for his years of service and dedication to the City of New Philadelphia during his 33 years of service to the City of New Philadelphia and the New Philadelphia Police Department. Third reading.
Is there any action been taken on this legislation tonight? Yes, Mr. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that resolution 12, 20.
He's not gonna be with us tonight. the next meeting, so we'll pass it at that time.
He'll be with us at the
Thank
next
you.
meeting. He's on vacation.
I don't have anything. so-
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Next.
Resolution number 14, 2023, a resolution authorizing the City of New Philadelphia to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or Local Transportation Improvement Programs, and to execute contracts as required and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action we're taking on council tonight?
Yes, Mr. President, I ask that we suspend the rules on proposed resolution 14, 2023.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Ripper, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mr. Rippeth.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Now, if I want to entertain a motion to pass, what is this, 14, right, resolution 14, 2023. Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Alonso.
yes, Mr. President, I move that we pass resolution 14, 2023.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rippeth. In discussion by the council or administration or the citizens, Mr. McAbeer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. If it's at the will of council to pass tonight, if I could have that signed so that I can get it out tomorrow, I would appreciate that, Julie. Thank you.
Any others? Roll call.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mr. Rippeth.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, 2023 has passed.
Resolution number 15, 2023, a resolution by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, authorizing and directing the Safety Director to enter into an agreement with Pierce Manufacturing to purchase an enforcer PUC and necessary equipment for the fire department at a cost not to exceed $1,474,992 and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there any action we're taking on this legislation tonight? Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that the rules be suspended on Resolution 15, 2023.
Do I have a second? Mr. Rippeth, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Rippeth.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
No.
All right, rules have been suspended. So, tomorrow night, then we will have or Wednesday night, we will have a special council meeting at 5:30 to have this on for the third reading, because we got a deadline to say yes or no by 10/1. So we will be having a special council meeting at 5:30 here in council chambers on Wednesday evening.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mrs. May.
I would like to call a salary committee meeting prior to the council meeting.
All
But I
right.
understand that 5:30 is probably the earliest we could do, so could we push the council meeting out, say, a half hour?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any objections to council? Okay, so at 5:30, we will have the salary committee meeting. 6 o'clock, we'll have a council meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Next.
Resolution number 16, 2023, a resolution by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia to authorize the New Philadelphia Police Department to hold the city auction online from November 8th, 2023 until November 17th, 2023, and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there any action we're taking by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Alonso?
Yes, Mr. President, I ask that we suspend the rules on resolution 16, 2023.
Do I have a second? Mr. Pace, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr.
Oh, I didn't see your hand, sorry, Ms. Ramos. Yes, Mrs. Ramos.
I just wanted to say on this particular issue, which I raised during the committee meeting, I have no problem with the police department having an online auction. In legislation, however, and this had never happened before as long as I've been here, that we named a particular company to conduct that online auction, therefore tie the hands of the chief police. And I know they do their own advertising about the online auction, so I just wanted to say, That's my objection.
My only comment on is, I'm just trying to give the police department plenty of time to advertise the auction, so they have plenty of time to get that out.
All right, roll call for suspending the rules.
Mr. Lancer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
No,
Mr. Rippeth.
Yes.
All right, so this piece will be on the Wednesday night agenda as well to pass or talk about for a third reading on Wednesday, so.
Resolution number 17, 2023, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. First reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Hearing none, we held for the next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Resolution number 18, 2023, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, to apply for financial assistance from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources through the Land and Water Conservation Fund for purposes of obtaining a park grant for improvements at the South Side Community Park. First reading.
Is there any action taken by council on this legislation tonight? Hearing none, it will be held for next reading at a regularly scheduled council meeting.
That concludes legislation for this evening,
All right.
Mr. President.
All right, we'll take about a 5-minute recess. We'll go into executive session.
Well, come here, we'll tell you how it's really pronounced. You're welcome.
All right, we're back in this 8:56, we're back in regular session. Is there any unfinished business for the council meeting tonight? Any new business for council tonight? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. We are adjourned at 8:57. See everybody Wednesday night at 5:30.